Hey friends, it's Anna. Hope you're doing well. I can't believe the new year is almost upon us, but that means it's time to do one of my favorite things, set up a new journal. So grab some tea or your own journal, get cozy, and let's get ready for 2024 together. I'm using this light teal journal from Sequez with a little ginkgo leaf embossed on the front. I used Sequez for my previous journal as well and was really impressed with the quality, especially given that their journals are very affordably priced. This one was only $18 on Amazon. I love splurging on an Archer and Olive or notebook therapy journal when I can, but it's also nice to have a dependable option that's more affordable as well. We're starting off with the name page, and I didn't love the text that was already printed here, so as you saw, I pasted in some dotted paper and wrote my name on that. I like to keep the artistic themes for my journal setups on the minimal side, so I'm doing a simple floral theme with these 5-petal flowers and some binding stems with a basic leaf shape. These aren't based off of a specific real flower, but they could easily be a few different 5-petal species like cherry blossoms or hydrangeas. I'll talk more about my process for drawing these flowers on the next page, but really they're very easy. I'm keeping the color scheme for the setup pretty neutral, so I know for sure it won't clash with any spreads that come next. I'm using a few different Tombow brush pens. The flowers are 2 tones of beige and the leaves will be a light green. I'll have all the colors listed in the description box below, and I'll also link any supplies I'm using in the setup in case you're curious. I'm using this subtle cream colored washi tape to add to the other 2 corners of the cutout, and that's it for the name page. Flipping over, we run into these 2 pages that are kind of awkward and don't lie flat. Last year I just glued these pages together to kind of hide it, but one of you all commented the idea to create a pouch with these pages, so that's what I'm going to try this year. And to put in that pouch, I'm creating my grid spacing bookmark. I'm using this page that I cut out of my previous journal for the grid. In case you're new to a grid spacing guide, this is basically a tool to help visualize different ways you can break up a page. So as you can see, I'm dividing the page into sections, both horizontally and vertically, and I also numbered the grid spaces on top and to the side so I know how big each section is. I divided my spacing guide into halves, thirds, and quarters. And I'm also using a gold gel pen to create those sections, but what it would look like with spaces in between. The idea is if I'm creating a spread that requires me to, say, make 3 columns, instead of counting all the boxes and doing the math each time, I can just pull out this bookmark, place it on the page, and use the sections I've already measured out. I used a bookmark like this in my last journal and loved it, especially since it's on a separate piece of paper so I could place it directly on my journal. The only thing I noticed is that I often put a title at the top of my spreads, so the vertical divisions weren't always helpful, so that's why on the back side of the bookmark, I'm creating another spacing guide, but with space for a title up top. Getting back into the journal, this left page is where I'm going to create a little pouch that will hold my bookmark when I fold it in half. This will make more sense in a second when I actually start cutting the page, but first I'm going to add my label and some art where the pouch will be. I'm using my Tombow Furanosuke brush pen to write the title in a serif font. You'll see me change this title at the very end when I'm done with both these pages, and I'm really glad I did because I think what I changed it to looks a lot better. Surrounding this box, I'm going to fill the page with lots of flowers and vines. My technique for the flowers is starting with the outline of 5 petals and then drawing some really thin and small ovals sprouting from the middle. These are the pistils of the flower. And then I add some uneven contour lines coming from the outer edges of each petal to give the flower a little texture. Some of the flowers I draw with a squatter petal in front, which gives it the look of a side view instead of a bird's eye view. And then sometimes I'll also add another line on the edges of the petal to make it look like the petal is folded over, which just gives the drawing a little more depth. It's usually my goal for the art in my journal to create drawings that are simple and easy, but still look elegant and beautiful. Now to add the color, I use a lighter beige for the base of the flowers and then use a slightly darker beige to go over the pistils in the middle and the contour lines on the edges of the petal, which just reinforces that depth. I'm using my favorite green Tombow color for the leaves, and I go over the vein of the leaf twice and add a few extra strokes at the base to create an ombre effect. This drawing ended up kind of looking like a vintage floral wallpaper, and I kind of love it. Now to create the pouch by cutting off the top of that page I just drew on. I'm using this plastic stencil sheet under the page so I can use my X-Acto knife without worrying about cutting into the page beneath. There's probably a better tool for this, so if you know of any cutting mats that are thin enough to use in a journal, please let me know. I'm kind of carving up the edges of these stencils. So now that the top page is gone, I have folded my bookmark in half so I can see how big of a pocket I need to leave in the middle. I'm using some double-sided scotch tape on the back, and now we have this cute little holder for my grid spacing bookmark. I am so happy with how this turned out, so thank you so much to that viewer who gave me this idea. So now we have room for one more spread on this right side before we get into my 2024 cover pages on the next set of pages. I decided to use this space for a dopamine menu, or a dopa menu for short. I first saw this idea from Plant-Based Bride, and since then I've come across it a few different times. I'm not sure who originally came up with the concept, but put simply, this is a list of activities that can bring you joy. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter with lots of functions related to our mood, but most of us know it as one of our happy hormones because it can produce feelings of reward or pleasure. So a dopa menu is supposed to provide some options when you're searching for that feeling, things that could be a mood booster or motivator, and specifically some options that maybe are a little healthier or more productive than just scrolling on my phone. I'm breaking up the list into 4 sections. Starters are quick activities, things I can do in 5 to 10 minutes when I just need a quick boost. A few things I'm going to list here are going on a walk, meditating, petting one of my cats. I think these will be perfect ideas for a quick break at work if I'm having trouble focusing, or something I could do if my mood is starting to take a deep dive and I want to change that trajectory. Entrees are activities that could be a little more involved or take more time. A few of mine are reading a book, going on a date with my husband, baking or cooking. Sides are things you can add to other tasks to make them more enjoyable, like podcasts, audiobooks, lighting a candle. And lastly, desserts are the things we already lean on, but we might want to rely on less, like scrolling on my phone. I love that desserts are still included because the point isn't to make these options forbidden, but rather to have other options available, or if I do choose to, say, watch TV, at least I'm more aware of it and I've chosen that intentionally. I'm really hopeful that having all these options so easily accessible will help me lean more on some healthy mood boosters. Okay, now that we've gotten those starter spreads done, moving on to my 2024 cover pages. Starting on the right side, which is where I'll have my 2024 title, I'm starting out with some flowers which will be on top of the numbers. When I first sketched this out in pencil, I drew the numbers first and then drew the flowers so they would look like they're growing out of the text. I'm using my black Tombow brush pen to do the numbers in a display font. I'm first outlining them with the fine tip side, and then I'll use the brush tip side to color the letters in. I really like the contrast of the bold black letters and the delicacy of the flowers. I guess you'll see what I mean more in a second when the letters are colored in. I think that contrast makes the title all the more striking. Now to add the color, I'm sticking with the same shades for the flowers and leaves, and then I thought the edges on the top and bottom of the page looked a little bare, so I'm going to add some washi tape. I wanted the tape to be subtle and stick with a more neutral tone, so I'm using a beige grid pattern tape and then that beige wavy line tape from before. These are both from the brand Nade, and I'll have links for the two sets that they come from in the description box. On the left, I'm doing a quote page. Some of the words I'm doing in a calligraphy font, but most of them I'm stamping out with my typewriter font stamp set. The quote reads, "Goals are moments in time. The journey in between is where we spend most of our lives." This quote actually comes from writer Carol, who is the person that invented the whole bullet journaling system. He said this in a video about intention setting. That video was part of a series I just watched about how to set better goals. I'll talk a little more about it in some later pages because it influenced how I'm going to set up my goal spread. But I really liked this sentiment, which was a major theme from this series, that we need to care about the process just as much, if not more, than just the specific outcomes we want to see. I'm adding some more washi tape, and that will complete our cover pages. This next spread will be my year at a glance, or what a lot of people call their future log. It takes up the next 4 pages in my journal, so I'm creating a little Dutch door so you can flip the page but still feel like you're in the same spread. This is basically my annual calendar. I'll have all the months and their calendars and a space to write any events as they get scheduled for future months. First, I'm writing the title up top in my basic calligraphy font, and then on either side of the letters, I'm going to draw 2 flowers. From here on out, the art is mostly pretty minimal, and most of the space will be for functional parts of each spread. The format that I've used for the past 2 years in my journal, and what I really like, is splitting each of the 4 pages into 3 columns, so there will be 12 total columns, 1 for each month of the year. I'll write out a mini calendar towards the top, and then there will be plenty of space below that where I can write events, travel, any plans I make in advance. I'm using this light pink, almost peachy color for the backdrop of where I'll title each month, and as you'll see, I accidentally made some of the boxes too long, so I'm using some whiteout to cover back up where I went over. I chose this light color to highlight a lot of the text throughout the setup because I thought it was a really pretty complement to the more muted colors in the florals. For the month's titles up top, I used my alphabet stamp set, and then I'm starting to create the calendars below. This is a lot of writing. I know there are stickers or printables that could do this for me, and maybe one day I'll finally invest in one of those. But I also don't mind some of these more repetitive, mindless tasks in bullet journaling. It can be kind of therapeutic to just turn off your brain and follow a pattern. And I did write the first and last date of each month in pencil first to make sure I didn't get off with any of my dates. I did the same exact thing on those second pages, and the last step for this spread is writing out a key for the symbols that I use to mark the calendars with holiday, travel, things like that. And that's my completed year at a glance. These next 2 pages will be the simplest to set up because most of the space will be for journaling on some reflection prompts. I mentioned earlier that I watched writer Carol's YouTube series on goal setting. I'll link those videos below if you want to check them out. But one of the main points he made is that goals should be aligned with your core values like family or creativity, things that will last forever and not end when the goal is reached. He talked about goals as lighthouses. They serve as beacons to help us navigate the ongoing journey of life, but they're not final destinations. So a goal like running a 5K, which is actually one of my 2024 goals, might not be helpful if you view it like you need to finish the race, but then never have to go on a run again. Really, the intention behind this goal is to be a runner, be active, be healthy. And so Ryder says it's important to stay in touch with those core values, and the goal is just a milestone that keeps you in that continual lifelong process of becoming those things. So based on that, I came up with 3 reflection questions to help guide my 2024 goals. What are my core values? Who do I want to be? And what does my dream life look like? I actually already journaled my answers to all of these more in a brain dump fashion in my regular journal. So I'm just going to write the final, more organized takeaways from that exercise and transcribe it here. Since these were the answers that helped me come up with next year's goals, I thought it would be helpful to have them written out somewhere easily accessible as a reminder and motivator. I also used Brené Brown's Living Our Values worksheet to help narrow down my core values, so I'll link that below as well if you find yourself wanting to reflect on this too. I added those 2 flowers to decorate at the bottom of the page, and that's it for this spread. On to the second to last spread for this setup. This is for my 2024 goals. I'm starting off the title by writing 2024 in the same font I used for the cover page, and then I'll title the left page Goals and the right page Plans. Similarly to my reflections, I've already done some brain dumping and journaling in a regular journal to narrow down the goals I have for next year. I came up with 10 different goals, so I'm creating a space to write each of them on the left page, and then a corresponding space on the right page will be for me to make a plan for that goal. Since annual goals tend to be a bit bigger, I think it's helpful to break down some of these into smaller steps, and having a plan of action just makes it more likely that I'll at least start working on the goal. So I'm drawing a box on each page and breaking that into 10 rows. The first 2 rows are a bit bigger on purpose because these are for 2 of my larger goals. I'm also drawing a line separating the first and last 5 goals because the top 5 is all work and YouTube related and the bottom is all personal goals. I'm not going to fill all of these out with their plans yet, but I'll fill in the top row as an example. One of my biggest 2024 goals is to launch a Patreon to go with this YouTube channel. So I wrote that in the top row, and below each goal, I'm also going to write what core values this connects to. Again, reinforcing the why behind each of these aims. In the planning section for this goal, I broke it down into some smaller steps, so I know exactly how to get started and what I need to do. I'm also going to highlight the top row of each goals box with the peach, just so the goals stand out, and then I'll also add the color to the title up top. This is probably my least favorite spread aesthetically, but I think functionally it'll be really helpful. On to the last spread for this setup, and this is actually one of my favorites aesthetically. This is my someday tasks spread, and I'm going to switch it up and put the title in the middle of the pages. This is a space for tasks that are on my list that I want to get done but aren't urgent and don't really have any specific timelines assigned to them. So this could be a perfect catch-all for those to-dos that I don't want to put on my current monthly or weekly spread because I don't want to commit to it right now, but I still want to write it down so I can get it off my mental list and also so I can be reminded of it. Last year I did quarterly spreads, but I honestly didn't use them that often, so I decided that instead of quarterly task lists this year, I would just have this general space that could be for any and all to-dos. I plan on checking in with this list during each monthly setup, and if I like having this, then I can always migrate any unfinished tasks into my next journal if they're still there. There's plenty of room between the two pages, and I added a border along the edges and these two groupings of flowers to further frame the space. Like I said, I love how this one looks visually, which is great because if I like how a spread looks, I'm more incentivized to turn to it. And that completes my 2024 bullet journal setup. Let's do a final flip through to see the whole thing. I'm really happy with the art and the spreads I chose for this one, and I feel so ready for 2024 now. Starting a new journal is just such a fresh feeling. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Please let me know which spread was your favorite, and be sure to subscribe if you'd like to stick around for more bullet journal content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Happy New Year!